Hey everyone, welcome to the Faith and Fandom podcast. Today we are joined by indie artist, comic creator, and Planet Fitness coach, Brittney Green. Brittney, any way specifically you'd like to introduce yourself, or?
Well, you did a great job. I'm really happy to be able to do this. It's a big honor, and I really was honored to be able to meet you at the North Carolina Heroes Con. But yeah, I'm really excited to be on your podcast. This is my first podcast, so really pumped.
So everybody listening on their car rides home or watching on Facebook, give Brittney a round of applause for her first podcast appearance. We're excited for it. And I'm grateful to have met you and really enjoyed seeing just, some visualizations of your heart at the con. But I just wanted to kind of get a conversation to talk with you and just see what you're about and what your art's about, your passion, your goal, your drive, your faith, with everything that goes with it. So start question of when did you get into art specifically? And then also when did you start creating your own content?
Yeah, so for as long as I remember, honestly, a little bit beforehand, I've always kind of been drawing. My mom has some of my first crayon drawings when I was 3, and they were like those little fish, So I've been drawing since then, and I've always been very enamored and fascinated by storytelling, as particular movie making, and just I love characters, and I love the drive and what the capability that you can do with stories. I think it's so impactful and so interesting, and I've just always been very fascinated by it. And so by around high school, I started just like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to start making my own stories. Like, I know I'm not good at it, but I'm just going to give it a shot. I'm just going to wing it and start building my own characters, start building concepts. And they definitely gotten a lot more refined, to say the least, throughout the years, thankfully so. And been praying that the Holy Spirit tells the stories that he wants to tell through me. And not just like my own imagination, but his imagination, his concepts as well. I want to surrender that to him because he's the one that gave me the gift, for sure. So.
Okay. For your own content, I saw that you had a comic called D.E.Agents, right? Was that right?
Yep.
And you've got a project now that you're you were just asking yesterday or day before, about potential Kickstarter information and stuff. So tell me about your original content.
Currently I have about 15 story concepts right now. Most of them are not released, but I have the released one so far: D.E.Agents, Quest for the Right Hand, Here's the Basics, and I'm currently working on a short mini series called Torn Veil. It's going to be a 3-part series, and then each story has its own genre and own commentary, whether it's on social issues or society, or it's something that I would have liked to seen in storytelling, or kind of like fighting against the common status quo of what you would normally see. For instance, in D.E.Agents, it's an gritty action oriented story. And when I love action movies, but I hate all the mindless violence. I hate all the unnecessary profanity. I hate all the random sex scenes. I'm like, okay, y'all are just ruining the film for me, And so I wanted a story that was action but thought provoking. Each of the main 3 characters has a different point of view and morality. 2 of the 3 are believers, and they kind of try to filter it out through that lens. And so it's going to be a really interesting story that, as the story progresses, so will the threats escalate as well, pushing their moral boundaries. I'm like, okay, well, how can I work through this environment? So I wanted it to be very thought-provoking and not just like, oh, main character shoots guy in the head. Oh, I guess you're done with, bud. No, these characters will have families. The characters, good and bad guys, will have backgrounds, and I wanted them to be raw but human as well and show that emotion. And then Quest is kind of like an action adventure, a little bit more lighthearted, Knights and Dinosaurs style. And then Torn Veil is going to be this I don't want to wait. How do I explain it? Say kind of ultra biblical. I want to do a lot of exegesis of the scripture itself, visual exegesis of spiritual warfare. And there's going to be a lot of straight up scripture in the story. I like the gospel. I'm going to have the gospel shared at least once per 3 issues, or of the 3 issues. Because I really want this to be an impactful story, almost like the Christian fight, through the spiritual lens. A lot of people don't think of it that way. And so I wanted to kind of like, hey guys, don't just get distracted by what you see, but all this stuff's going behind the scenes as well. So it's really fun. Obviously, a lot of it is visual metaphor in that sense, because, there's no way I could look in the, in the spiritual world and be like, yes, that's exactly how it is. But a lot of it's like obviously artistic rendition of all that. But as an educational purpose, to kind of tell the other side of the stories, if that makes sense.
Okay, sweet. Now, for the stuff that you've made, like Quest and Torn Veil, those are in progress works, right? Those. Mm-hmm. Okay. For D.E.Agents, how did you go through publishing / releasing all of that?
So it's pretty wild, and to be honest, it's still a wild ride because a lot of my series are going to be ongoing. Quest, I intend it to be a 3-part series. I'm going to keep working on it until it's finished. Or not, I say Quest, I mean Torn Veil. Quest is going to be ongoing. But it's really interesting because I have all these ideas bubbling up in me, and I'm just like, I just got to let them out, So I actually don't go through a publishing company. I don't have a publisher or anything like that. I just do everything myself. The only thing I don't do is print it. And I use Kablam Printing for that. They've been really good and reliable. But like I said, I'm not under any titles of my own. I would like to have my own production company one day, to say the least. So I'm just a little self-made bean over here.
Not, I don't know if money's sensitive or anything. How'd you fund it?
Honestly, I pay all of it out of pocket, and money's never really a sensitive issue with me. It's all out of pocket. And it's tolling. Yeah, that's for sure. But I know, yeah, it's not cheap to make comic book. Yeah. But there's a lot of times I want to give up, but I'm just like, all right, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to keep working, even if I have to make smaller batches, that's okay. I'm going to just keep doing my thing, keep working at it. That's why I was considering a Kickstarter for Torn Veil, because my intention is a 3-part series. And then at the end, when the story's over, have a graphic novel edition with all the concept art and like extras. So I'm not sure if that would be good to wait till everything's finished and then have a Kickstarter for that. I've never had a Kickstarter, but it's something I was thinking about. Wasn't sure if I was going to go that route because I'm not used to people like, oh yeah, I'll support you, So I'm just like, I'll just pay it all myself. That way I don't have to worry about depending on other folks,
How has the reception been for your work so far?
It's definitely been a mixed bag. There's a lot of people that get excited. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are seldom people that get very excited for my comics, and that really means a lot to me. The people who are interested, they get very excited and they can't wait for the next issue. And that's very far and few between just because I'm so unknown. But like I said, I appreciate any bit of support that I do get. And like this right here, this whole thing means so much because just somebody to sit down to talk to me, I'm like, thank you so much, man. It is a whole week, I don't get to talk about my concepts or stories and processes very often. And so it makes me very excited when I do, and people, when they do sit down and listen, they hear the excitement, they see how fleshed out the characters are, and the stories are, yes, they're still they're ongoing works in progress. I do have a framework of how I want to structure the stories and story arcs and all that stuff, but as of each issue I write it as I go, so it's kind of fresh and interesting in the sense of like it's almost like everyday life in this different setting, you know, with these different characters. But the overall story arc and the character planning is all there already. I'm just filling in the blanks as I go along, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, good landmarks to kind of jump between. So why this medium for telling your stories? Like, I know you said you've got stories in you that you wanted to tell. Like, was there ever a consideration for any other medium for it? Like, was it always going to be comics? Was it ever like just print? Was it ever just audio? Like was comics, you knew day one when this was in your heart, you was like, I need to tell it this way? Like,
well, that's actually pretty cool. So, or I like that question a lot. So I actually, I kind of really ambitious, and I don't know why, but I would my end goal would to be have my own film production company. I would love to be able to create and direct my own movies and films. And I've been trying the best I can to get that position, but it is so difficult. And I'm like, all right, Lord, it's in your hands. I did all I can do, to say at least. But I chose comics as the primary medium because there's several reasons why I do things that I do, because if I can't think of a good reason why to do it, I just don't do it. So comics being a good first medium to start with for that is because it's the only thing that I can do on my own. The only thing I can reliably do and affordably do on my own. The only thing that's very costly is the printing of the comics. But if I'm the only one doing all the labor on the books, then it's free labor, right? It's just the energy and the creativity and the time that goes into it. Also, a lot of film is based off of pre-existing material. So you'll see, I have worked with some people that in sense of giving them concept art or giving them storyboarding for their film pitches. And a lot of people like to see, whether they're producers or whatever, they like to see pre-existing material that's based, what the film is based off of, so they can see like, okay, you mean business when you're actually have these concepts. And so I want to show that. I want to show I mean business. I want to tell these stories. I want to have fully fleshed out characters, full aesthetic for the stories. You know, I want to have these interesting genres and thought-provoking concepts. And another thing is, you know, talking about different mediums in regards to, obviously, I like to go into films, doing comics now, and I do have a couple of plans for video games as well, God willing, you'll let me. Torn Veil, that my intention for that is to be a video game. But I'm like, all right, let's make it a comic right now, because it would be such a cool heavy metal video game. It would be a straight up experience for people. It'd be like, I imagine it'd be like half cinematic and then half like intense like gameplay, and be like, ooh, it'd be so cool. I'm like, I get revved up just thinking about it. And like I said, I want it to be an experience for somebody, because art is so important and influential, and it's part of core memories is the visual aspects of art and the stories that art is told through. And so it's just a powerful medium, and I want to try to spread out as much as I can, you know, with what I have right now, and God willing, I'll be able to go further and further with it.
I completely get the, you know, doing what is within your own wheelhouse. And because for the longest time, even working with my stuff, writing was the one thing I knew I could do basically by myself. And, you know, so that became my, you know, viable lane for that. And my only cost would be usually I'd pay an editor or production or something to that effect. And, you know, but it's hard to feel like someone else sees your vision.
Oh yeah.
And for the people that do see your vision, that they are willing to actually go the distance with it. And you know, I've worked with I've been doing this in some facet or another for about 10 years now, like coming up on 10 years. And when I started out, I had people that, like, even for my first book, I hired someone to do the art for my first book. And then they didn't get it done. And then what they did do was subpar. because they forgot and they tried to throw something together like that day.
Yeah.
And so for the cover of my first book was literally something I threw together in Microsoft Paint
Mhm.
because I had run out of time for my own timetable. And
Mhm.
I had like a for almost 6 years, I had an art partner that would go to our booth with me to the Faith and Fandom booth, and like he was a great artist, or he is a great artist. He's not like dead or anything. um, how did Vincent die? But he was a professional artist. Like he taught art
Mhm.
um in schools, and he had a degree in it and everything else. But he would come to cons and he would just sit at the booth with me uh because I for a season I was his college pastor. And
Mhm.
so like he would come sit at the booth with me and have like a sign for like $2 sketches. And like he'd
Mhm.
have like cards like 5x7 or something. It's like he'll sketch whatever you want for $2. And that was part of his ministry, in that like you even walking around the shows, or even $2 for a decent sketch is like pretty like valuable.
Oh
and
yeah. Yeah.
so we'd end up having lots of like spiritual conversations with people because they would pay him for a affordable sketch and then stand around the table and wait for it. And so that just became like our little back and forth. Or he would do art prints that would almost be like really well done memes
Mhm.
um of like art that had like we could put like scripture or spiritual themes to it as well. But
That.
um it went really well for a very long time. And but then life, like
Mhm.
marriage, kids, he moved to a different state to play in a church. And so it became like, okay, now I'm by myself. And
Mhm.
so like commissioning other artists to get stuff done, like um I've worked with maybe 5 different artists on projects. And I knowing how hard artists work, for me it's really hard to not pay them well. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I know that you guys get shortchanged a lot when it comes to stuff. And like you know for I just put out a children's book, and I commissioned an artist to do the art for that. And
Mhm.
like when it was done, he's like, you pay me what you want. And I'm like,
Yeah. Because
I'm
it's
like,
always hard, yeah, as an artist. I'm like, because you're just like, there's so many times people are just like, oh, that's a little steep, and you're just like, that's my time, my skill, my energy, my talent. And I always feel bad. I usually underprice my things, to be honest, because artists, we have to, you know, balance what the client wants and time, cost, and skill and material. And those are like the four concepts that we like. If you want it really fast, you're gonna sacrifice either the skill of it, or the you have to sacrifice one thing. Like if you want like really high quality artwork, you're gonna have to wait a really long time for it, right? So there's always those four concepts that's float around, and it's an interesting balance for sure.
and one of the biggest things that's been a help for me is like when the world shut down
Mhm.
for a minute. um at that point in time, like all the cons got canceled. And I
Mm.
think that I had invested about $3,000 of my family's money into booth fees
Mm.
for the next year, of like,
Mhm.
because a lot of these shows you have to pay for like months and months in advance.
Yeah.
And we had like about 3 grand floating in the ether. um and somebody's like, oh, make a Patreon. And I'm like, and I felt so weird, like, of like, I just write Bible studies. I don't think I qualify for that. And so like people eventually like nudged me, and I did that. And that's been one of the biggest things, is that my Patreon for the last minute, outside of like covering some booth fees and stuff, has simply been to pay artists
Mhm.
that are working on our stuff.
Mhm.
So that, I when the guy made our children's book wouldn't give me a solid price, I'm like, here's a number. This is okay. And he said that's more than fair. So I could literally just take that from Patreon and say, but I'm also, it's a cool thing to be able to tell the people that are like supporting us on Patreon to say, hey, here's a page this artist did. Look. And like to
Mhm.
walk through the process so they know that, it's that. But so with that, what's your support network look like for this?
Well, first, also, I wanted to say that the illustrations for your new kids book, they look phenomenal. Like, they look really nice, by the way.
Thanks.
But
I didn't draw them,
as a
but I was like, he did a great job.
yeah,
But
he did do it.
but
Um,
what I think what would be great is if you saw the storyboard I sent him, like the horrible abnormal stick figures of like scribbly lines that started that. So that, it's like you're like, well done.
we love those. um, but yeah, I don't. As to answer your question, I don't really have support. Um, Patreon and Kickstarters, they have flown across my mind before, but I just don't have a lot of confidence that people would be like, yeah, here's some couple bucks each month. Cause I just, I say these things not to like pity party. I just say these just being blatantly honest. Like, I'm pretty hidden. I'm pretty, uh, you know, in the back seat most of the time, in most regards. So it's that's why I get so excited when people actually like ask me questions about the thing I work on the most. I'm like, oh boy, yeah. So that's why I'm very reluctant about that, and that's why I'm so like, all right, I'll just pay for it myself, because I don't know if I don't think I would have enough of a base to even be able to ask for something like that. Because I know there's plenty of artists that I follow that they do fantastic. They're able to fund their whole thing just through their Patreon. I'm like, I would have ideas about doing that, but to be honest, like I would love an assistant or something because a lot of this is kind of overwhelming to take in consideration of everything, like balance of actual creation of the art, characters, stories, writing it, concept art. That's my forte. That's where I like to focus and put most of my brain power to. But then you also, as an independent, you also have to, think of the social media, think of exposure. You have to network. You have to consider, who you can reach out to. What are your support avenues? Are you reaching out to businesses to have your products out there? And so there's a cost of supply and cost of shipping, and so there's a lot to it. Like, bro, I just want to focus on the art so bad. Like, I wish I had a business partner or something, So I try to figure it out when I can and do what I can with what I have. That's why I need to really buckle down and work on that website, because I feel like once I get that website out, it would kind of add a bit of protection to my characters and stories, because then they're like, you have an origin source and a creator source to the concepts themselves, but it also acts as a gallery. It also acts as a hub if you want to read more about the stories and characters. And I would probably have it links to my Etsy, or if I do make a Patreon one day or YouTube one day. I've been slacking on the Etsy though, because they're adding so many fees and they're just not wanting to cooperate with me. I'm like, dude, I just want to put free shipping. They're like, are you sure about that? And they're like, yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so
I know that for me, like with my first book, when I first started doing this, like about 9 years ago, I just put a Facebook post out, very similar to the Instagram post you put out yesterday, of like, hey, I'm working on this project. If I were to make a Kickstarter, who would be interested? So I literally put that post out about 9 years ago or so, and a professor from a college who attended the church I was pastoring at that time just like sent me $500. Like
wow.
he's like, will this get you started on whatever you need? And I'm like, yeah.
That's crazy.
And so I never started a Patreon. I never started a Kickstarter or anything, because literally his gift covered my booth fee at Heroes and covered production of like 75 books.
Nice. That's epic right there.
And so that was my first start, and like literally that seed money, so to speak, just kind of kept like it kept going with that. But like it's a hard thing to think that you're going to have support and base. And I know that I don't know your whole network or how people do react to you, where you're at and everything as well. But I know that when I started my Patreon, I'd say for like the first year, it was maybe 8 people giving $3 a month. And that wasn't like a big thing, but it was a big thing. And
Oh yeah.
and I've got one guy that has just been a huge blessing, and he's like, so somebody told me your Patreon doesn't have vision. Like when they were looking at my Patreon, they were critiquing me. They're like, your Patreon doesn't have vision. They said that everything that you've got listed and marked here is for limiting people that just want to give small. And they said, what's a big thing? And I said, well, I could do like $100 a month if somebody wants to like cover all my booth fees for the year. And I was like, I put that as like some like, okay, this is almost a joke. Like, and like I've got one Patreon supporter that's been doing that for 9 months.
Whoa, that's insane.
So I've got like a little tent sign on my booth, and it's just like, this booth was sponsored by this guy. And like, so I just yeah. I would just encourage you, like, I'm not telling you like go make one now or anything, but don't if you've got people that are encouraging you to, if you feel the need to at some point, it's easy for you to sit back in your isolation because you do this all by yourself, to think that nobody's going to back you, or that you won't have sufficient. I feel like there's more people that would be for you than you're aware of. So just putting that on your cornflakes. Because I mean, that was the reality, Emily, even with me meeting you, was like, okay, so I mean, Chris and I, from Columbus Got Game, Chris Poirier, we've been working together in either podcasting or con ministry for like, I don't know, it feels like 7 years. And he used to run one of the bigger cons in North Carolina.
Wow.
Before he moved down to Columbus. And he with like all the major comic book people that were there the weekend of Heroes, he literally only messaged me to go see you.
Oh, seriously? I saw his message on Instagram, like, yes, I did get to meet Mr. Hector.
He wasn't like, hey, go say it, hey, to Jim Starlin and get this signed, or shoot. Like, his literal only contact with me was like, hey, go see this person. And because he had heard so much good support about you from Pat.
I love Mr. Pat. He is so bomb diggity.
And but that's the thing, like, he had heard from down the line, about, just Chris had heard about you from Pat, and he'd seen your books on the shelf too at the shop. And just with that, like, I feel like the more that you're exposed and the more you're out there, there's going to be a lot more people that are going to be jumping in on your support. So like, outside of just financial support, who's your people support? Like,
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it.
Okay. So definitely, like, my dad, I'm so thankful for him. He's like my best friend, and he's the one that takes me to a lot of the like the out of town shows. We'll go together because that's how you have a special thing you like to do with each person. Well, that's with me and my dad. We both love going to the shows. He loves digging through the comics. I love talking to the artists and meeting all the folks, like a South Carolina show. I'm just like, Dad, let's go. I want to meet Kevin Sorbo. And he's like, okay. And so we got to meet Mr. Sorbo, and that guy is pretty epic too. And so he has been also, I recently had like a dinosaur coloring book, and I wanted to get, a good sizable order, and he knows that it's expensive to get things done. He's like, he pretty much got the whole order for me done. And so I'm really thankful for that. He covers the hotels, and I try to give him a little bit when I can. And I've been so thankful and blessed to have such a good dad that supports me. And my grandma, my mom and grandma are very, verbally supportive, and my grandma will help too when she can. And I'm very thankful for that. Um, and that's a good idea when you mentioned the booth, like sponsored by booth, because it's just like I was really talking to my dad at Heroes Con, and saying like, yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to do any big shows like this anytime soon. Maybe not until I'm at least a little bit more established, because it was a great deficit for sure. I loved the experience. It was like it was so fun. It was a huge blessing, especially on Saturday when we just got to give out to people. And I love that. It's going to be such a special memory to me. I'm still savoring those memories. But in the financial sense, it was a huge deficit on both of our ends, because I spent a lot of money on, I paid for the booth, but then I spent a lot of money on the cost of the products and stuff. I had a lot of new products I was excited about, and I barely had any biters, but that's okay, because then I'll have enough for other shows. The last big show that we have planned is in Savannah, Georgia, in the end of the month of July. And so I'm really excited about that. It's a 2-day event.
That show actually looks really great, by the way. Like I've been watching that show too. Yeah.
I'm pretty excited. So that's the last big show that we're going to go into for a while. And then I have a couple of small local shows, like in Columbus. We're going to be doing the one at Coca-Cola Space Science Center. And then we're going to have one in Conyers, Georgia, hopefully. So.
Oh, I like Conyers. It's a nice area.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably far from you guys, but I'm pretty certain if you have a desire and it works out, I have some friends that run a show in Savannah that you could have a free space for.
Ooh, well, because Savannah, so the North Carolina, I think that was like a 6 or 7 hour trip. How many days is it?
It's just a 1 day.
That might be worth it. I'll definitely talk to my dad about that.
I'll shoot you I'll email you some info or whatever.
Yeah, please do. Because I love doing shows like that. And push come to shove, if he can't come, I'll just travel by myself. That's not too far from us. I like Savannah a lot.
But yeah, I mean, some of these shows are big. So let me was your space at Heroes just an artist alley space, or was it like an inline booth? Okay. Yep. That was me. Like when I started at Heroes as my first show ever. And I had 1 book and 2 t-shirts and 2 prints, and that was my whole booth. Like I had no signage, no anything. It was like, here's a small stack of books, here's 2 t-shirts, and here's 2 prints. But it can rack up a huge deficit with travel costs, with and gas, food, and like it's not like you can eat there cheaply, and it's a hard road to go sometimes. And I'm going to be doing a show the same days as the Savannah show. I'm going to be doing GalaxyCon Raleigh, and they overlap, because I really wanted to do the Savannah show before I realized the dates overlapped. But it is a hard. So outside of your dad, is anybody else like you work with or that supports the whole process?
No, not really. Like Mr. Pat, he's a huge blessing. He lets me co-sign at his shop, and I really appreciate that. And I'll come visit him, and it surprises me every time when I do make a sale. I'm like, really? Like it tickles me purple. But that's pretty much it. It's just me, myself, and I. Other than the Lord himself, he's been my main inspiration, my main fuel and motivation, and I'm like, all right, God, I'm just gonna keep on trusting, So
for future stuff, like do you have any people that you would want to work with? Do you have any like partnerships or any people that you've seen their work and you'd be like, oh, I'd like to get my stuff in there with that, or any companies that you've thought of even sending your book to try and like get picked up?
I'm not even sure where to start with something like that, to be honest. Because every now and then my dad, actually, this is another way my dad supports me. We will do our own show. And by say we rent out a space at the DoubleTree Hotel for like a weekend or something. And we'll invite some other artists and some other vendors. And so we'll just do our own little thing. And it's pretty cool. But there was some people that mentioned, like, just in conversation, like that they tried to get their work published through like a Christian company, but that they didn't like his content, I guess, wasn't very Christian oriented. I'm like, well, that's probably why. Because I know for my stuff, it can be very raw, but it's never in a malicious way. It's in
Right.
like, this is raw truth, and then there's things I don't sugarcoat my stories. I will purposely not add things that's pointless or senseless in my stories. Like, you're not gonna see my characters like swearing up and down. They're probably never gonna swear. You're not gonna see all these, like I said, obscene things here and there, but there will be like graphic content in some of my stories, but it's to expose and not to glorify. But anyway, I have thought about, especially with Torn Veil, because it will be kind of heavy metal, but I am going to have the gospel in it, each issue at least once. Probably, I know the second issue is probably going to be shared 4 times with like 4 different characters, which is pretty cool. And it's all my stories are either have Christian foundations, they have Christian messaging in it. If not, you see like Christian life play through. It's very important to me. It's in the core of all of my stories, because I don't want to make stories to go against God's word. I only want to make stories that support his word, because there's enough stories out there going against his word. It's going against his foundation. It's going against his design and plan. I'm like, there's enough of that. I want to combat against those kind of things. I want to help plant good seeds of truth and of wisdom, and just, like I said, thought-provoking material. And that's the end goal there. And I just want to keep pushing into that. And but yeah, I hope I'm coming off okay. Sometimes I'm not as eloquent as I would like to be.
Oh no, dude, you're fine. You're great. Just on a note, just to tell you, you might like, even if it's as simple as like passing off one of your books to them, you might want to check out Keen Spot or Scout.
Okay.
I'm currently there's some dudes at Keen Spot that just do some really good work. Potsky and Bill, like there's Billy and Potsky. They're 2 guys that like make some like really cool books, and like they did one, and it's not like a Christian book or anything, but they made a book called Junior High Horrors, which is all the horror movie people as middle school students.
That's funny.
And so their book kind of took off, and my first time at San Diego, I ran into them there, and it was like we literally left a show in North Carolina to go to San Diego, and I was like, hey, familiar faces. And they had told me that Keen Spot as a company is a lot more open to content than most other companies. Okay. And so they said it, not in a negative way. They said, if you ever want to throw your Jesus stuff at us, we could probably make that happen too. And I was like, okay. And so like I'm working on a comic. Like when I working on, I've storyboarded and written a comic. I haven't made it any further than that. And because the guy who did the children's book was going to do that too. And I needed to pick which one's first. And so, I picked the kids book with that, but like my hope and goal is that I'm going to get this at least inked and penciled and send it in to Keen Spot and say, here's the first issue. Would you like this?
Hey, would you like this?
And it's like, because if you like this, you can pay us and we'll keep making lots of it. But like there's been folks that like I've seen that have been good opportunities. And I can say too, like going back to the other publishing thing, getting published with Christian organizations is hard, because they're like, I'm all for holiness, and I am all for, sanctification and growth of a believer and all of that. But sometimes like the standards that are set are like, way hard. Or they're very pick and choosy. My first book, I tried to submit it to Lifeway. And that Lifeway said, hey, we like this. We need you to take out this chapter. And And it's like, and none of my content has like profanity in it or even vulgar statements, but it's like because I was referencing a television show that they didn't approve of, they're like,
Mm.
nope, it's got to go. And I was like, no, this needs to be here. Like I felt very firmly about it. And then what cracked me up is let's say a year later or less, um yeah, I was at Winter Jam. You're familiar with Winter Jam? Like,
Mm-mm.
okay.
No.
Winter Jam's like the big Christian music festival that tours around the country.
Okay.
It's like $10 to get in, but they'll bring in like 30 artists or whatever. And so Winter Jam did a whole gospel presentation based on the TV show that Lifeway said was not appropriate. And then like I found out like the gospel presentation video stuff and everything was produced by Lifeway. And I'm like,
Hey, wait a sec.
I was like, it's like a party foul. So it's, you know, it's hard to find people that can agree with your vision that are going to also agree with every method you take.
Yeah. And that's been a huge reluctance that I have towards approaching like companies, producers, or publishers, because every single aspect of the character design, of the story elements, that's a lot of it's deeply symbolic of what I'm trying to communicate. And like I said, sometimes things are kind of raw. It's not in a sense it's going to be bad, but it's purposeful. And so like this main character I'm working on now, and he looks kind of sleazy, and that's on purpose because there's a reason he's got like was a razor wire tattooed on his neck, but that's for a reason. You know, a lot of this stuff is symbolic. A lot of this has meaning to it, and he's going to have this cool redemption arc, you know? And that's my main thing that I've been like, I feel like if I approach somebody, then they would want to change or take away or say, oh, I like this, but you got to completely like scrap Einer from D.E.Agents. Like, bro, that guy's too edgy. You know, he's you can't control him. We don't like that. Even though Eric is like his best friend, his brother, and he's been trying to work on him since their mid-20s, you know, so there's purpose behind it and there's a heart behind it. And so that's something that I've definitely been kind of reluctant about. I'm just like, I really feel like somebody's going to want to change something, and all of it has purpose and meaning to it. Because like I said, I would not do something, create something or decide to do something, well, first without a lot of intentional prayer behind it, but also if it doesn't have purpose or reason. I love symbolism, parallelism, and I love to convey that through these characters, through the stories. And so a lot of it's very, very important to me, because a lot of people want to use negative symbolism, hidden symbolism, things to that are hidden. I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to do that, but in a good way. I'm going to do that, in a biblically inspired way, so, and like I said, it's very important to me. Very important.
So right now, what are the rest of the shows you said you're going to be at for the year? You're going to be at Savannah.
Savannah.
Oh, and you passed that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. So definitely, like I said, Coca-Cola Space Science Center in Columbus, and that one's August 28th, I think. And then the one in Conyers, I would love to do that one. I don't know if my spot is secured yet, and that one's like December 4th, I think. But those are the ones that I have for the rest of the year. Like, I would love to see about getting South Carolina again. Well, I would love to do big shows, but it's just too financially tolling right now. So I might just stick to small shows. I would love to do big shows, but I might stick to small shows at least for a while until I get a little bit more off my feet. So try to get more inventory,
And I've been surprised many a time that sometimes small shows will do better than some of the big ones. And I spoke at a Bible camp in Alabama. Right, like I left Heroes Con and drove to Alabama to do a Bible camp. and I still had my books with me, and they like, and one of the things that I was a counselor at that camp 21 years ago. And
Mhm.
so the speaker, the guy who runs the camp's like, hey, tell them about your nerd stuff.
Yeah.
And they gave me like a 30-minute like extra chapel time to say, hey, here's what I do, and here's how you can use stuff that you're passionate about to share the gospel with others. And like I did, like when the parents can pick their kids up, they said, hey, you can set your stuff up and parents can buy books for their kids. And
That's cool.
I did better there than like half the shows I've done this year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Smaller
so,
shows are great for me. Yeah.
and well, small shows too give you a good opportunity to actually talk with people about your art.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes a big difference as well. So you mentioned it earlier, on Saturday of Heroes Con, which if y'all aren't familiar, Heroes Con is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday show. Friday and Sunday are the moderate days, and Saturday's the big day. You chose to give away everything at your booth on Saturday that people were interested in. Is that a right statement, or how did that play out?
So I sold my normal things Friday and Sunday, and I had a lot of my gospel or Christian oriented stuff as well. So like I had these posters I made up a while ago. They were kind of like, it was kind of funny. It was like a gag project that I dubbed Christian propaganda, air quotas, because it's like, oh yeah, well, there's so much secular propaganda. Oh, I have some Christian propaganda. And I did those like 1950s looking art style. And I had those like posters, like, you know, with Bible verses or gospel message on them. And some of them I went around town and posted them up on like businesses or, you know, on the walls. And it's pretty funny. And there was one that was like a little my adrenaline was going up. Let's just say it was kind of sketchy, where I put one of them like haha, and I was like, my friend was with me and she was like, let's get out of here. But I'm sorry, I'm a little out there anyway. But yeah, so I had those. I had my Here's the Basics, which I know I mentioned them before, which my Here's the Basics are like a mini comic. They're like a half comic, sharing gospel or Christian oriented, you know, topics, just like the basics of theology. I only have 2 issues right now. The first one is just the general creation and who, you know, God the Father and his work in creation. And then the second one talks about Jesus, and then the third one will be talking about the Holy Spirit. And then after that, I'll talk about the Trinity and God's Word in one issue. And then after that, I plan to talk about attributes of God, like his, you know, different things about his personality. And I'm gonna do a revision of that as well. But I have those. I will not charge. I'll put them in like, the only time I'll air quotes charge for those would be if I were to put them in like a bundle pack and with other art stuff. But really, it's just still kind of like a free thing I want to put out. But usually, most of the time, it's all free. I give them out. And so I had plenty of those I was giving out. I had a lot of like Jesus stickers I was giving out, some pins, bookmarks, and stuff like that. There was a couple of t-shirts my dad had made up, just that says like Jesus on it, or, you know, some of his designs that he did. Speaking of, side note, my dad and I have been trying to talk about doing a little t-shirt. I don't know if you even call it a brand. I don't think it'd be that for a while, but just make our own t-shirts called Epic Jesus Moment. And because that's just like a little phrase I like to throw around a lot.
I've got that sticker on this laptop recording this right now.
Yeah, man, that's like my favorite. But and it'll have these like intensely intricate designs that I would do the artwork behind it and the social media, and then Dad can work about the business aspect, and we can split the cost and split the profit. I'm like, so I'm coming up with the first design now, and almost finished with it. And we've been sitting down and thinking about some really cool concepts with that, and to do if it starts to go off well, like being able to donate some shirts or have some of the profits go to something like Samaritan's Purse, or we're just trying to think it out right now. But anyway, so yeah, we had what happened there was I was really wrestling with these different concepts. And I was like, well, Holy Spirit, like help me what do you want me to do on this day? Like, I want you to tell me. And then he dropped this idea to me of just to basically, share the gospel, share God's love, and then just give out stuff that day on Saturday. And so I did. I was very thankful that I got to, and I'm really grateful that I had at least enough to fill up a table, because the stuff I had Friday and Sunday were different than I had Saturday. And so if anybody walked by, I didn't want to turn down anybody, because that's the concept and heart behind my art in general. I don't want it just to be for a Christian audience. I want a Christian audience to be able to feel safe in watching or reading my content, but I want to be able to reach out to people who wouldn't normally have a Christian point of view on things. I think that's really, really important to me, reaching out to the lost. But that's what I wanted to do, is like a statement to God. I'm like, all right, Lord, I want all of me to be to be submitted under him, under the Lord, and I want my art to do so as well. I pray that my art never becomes an idol. I love doing it. It's a passion. I work on it almost pretty much every day, but I don't want it to become above God. So I'm like, all right, Lord, I want this to be like a public statement of that. I want to use this day to serve him. And I was just telling people, I think what I was telling people a lot was, hey, if there's anything that you find of interest on the table, you're welcome to it. If you don't worry about it, you just grab what you like. And I just want to share a little bit of God's love and kindness. He's been so good to me and so giving to me. And I just want to share a little bit of that to others. I know saying, like, I know I can't outgive the free gift of salvation now, but I just wanted to share a little bit of God's heart to other people. And so that was kind of along the lines of what I was saying. And I was just really thankful for that. And I just was really tickled that I was able to do that. And that's definitely going to be such a good memory to me. And I kind of felt a little bad because my booth neighbor, man, that girl is so sweet and so humble. And I'm so thankful for her, because I was kind of giving her some sermons left and right. Not even on Saturday, but just on the other days too. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Miss Michelle, I don't mean to give you sermons. But she was very receptive to it. And I don't know her where her heart is. I don't know where her issues are. I don't know where her walk is. But I was thankful that she was even just willing to listen to what I had to say. And so I hope that, that the Holy Spirit worked through anybody or worked through me and touched anybody. I just wanted to plant some good seeds that day, and I was thankful I was able to. So
I've found that over the years of doing like con stuff and that your booth neighbors usually can be some of the most fertile ground for ministry. Like, cause it's not just the con attenders. It's not just, people trying to buy stuff. Like I'll walk in and like say, all right, God, you've put me sandwiched between these two people for the next 3 days. What's up? and there's been plenty of times where, like, because I try to be early for shows, because I'm old and I'm tired and I hate trying to rush to put a show up on like the morning of or whatever. So I'll go the day before. And there's been plenty of times I've seen people walk up and like they'll see the Jesus stuff in it, like just coming down the alley. Like, and they'll I'm grateful that I've had several times where people will say, I was really worried when I saw that you were next to me, but you're pretty cool. Or, and so like to be able to have some conversations and build some relationships, like, I've done marriage counseling for people that I've, met at the booths, like that were booth next to me. Like there's one couple, there's one couple that had some problems a few years later, and they're like, hey, do you offer marriage counseling? And like I officiated another guy's wedding, and that was just a booth neighbor. Like we were beside each other.
That's epic.
And so in doing that, it's created some really cool opportunities. So just to ask this, because I don't want to just glance over it, what is your what's your testimony? Like where's your faith come into your life? When did that start? Like what's that look like for you?
Oh man. That's a long story, my friend.
Share what you want, but like no pressure.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of go over like a synopsis of it, I guess.
Okay.
So I'm so thankful I was raised in a good household, in a believing household. And all of us, we've, been on the rocks. You know, we've neglected at times, especially, the word of God. And it's just, I'm thankful that the Lord's never let go of us. We never stopped believing, but we definitely had our seasons of, being neglectful. But anyway, so I was raised in a great household. And when I got into I've grown up Christian basically. And sometimes I just look back so fondly on like my childhood years. I'm like, man, I just go up to people and just pray for them. And I remember like my granny, when she was still with me, I don't know where I got it, but I had a little bottle of, like, I called it anointing oil. And I would go up to pray with her and put a little oil on. I'm just like, I don't know why I did that, but it cracks me up though. But my teenager years are really hard. I went through a really dark space and a dark time. And they were just awful. Like, that's, my granny passed away when I was 9. That started things. I'm right now, I'm very careful of the media I take in, and I take it seriously. Like, I used to watch and listen to, play video games, like a lot of dark stuff. And it was so toxic on my soul, and it just radiated through my art. And I would draw a lot of like really gross, like dark things, like a lot of like yucky things, like a lot of monsters, creatures, stuff like that. And it was just really toxic, and it was just a really bad place. The high school was awful, like had super bad depression. Just, it was a terrible environment that made things worse and worse. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord has never forgotten me. He's never left me, because my whole life I felt very isolated. I felt like I've been in the same season of just isolation. Like, as a child, I remember in elementary school, I felt very alone and isolated. Even some of the teachers were concerned. And so it's been a struggle for me for a lot of these years. And that's why it's such a struggle trying to get my work out there. Because I like to make the comment, if my characters can speak and communicate better than I can, because they are how I want to speak and communicate to the world. And I know I'm not that eloquent of a person either. I can be sometimes, but a lot of times I stutter. Anyway, but yeah, so it was just like a really hard time. I never stopped believing in the Lord, but it was certainly, I wrestled so much. And I went down a really dark path and allowed a lot of bad things in my life. And so the more God was revealing his truth to me, the more that he was showing himself as present in my life, the more I was just like, all right, Lord, I threw away so much movies and games. I threw away so much just trash. And I'm just like, Lord, I'm so sorry. I let all this stuff in my life. That's why I'm so paranoid about what I watch and listen to now, because I'm just like, it was a curiosity that got me. And that's how I fell into all that stuff. And so I'm just like, Lord, like, you given me this skill and talent, and let me not waste it. I want this to serve you and you alone, with the Holy Spirit helping me and guiding me through all that I do. And so I'm so thankful that he's been by my side, even in the bad times, and that he's never left nor forsaken me. And so I've just been trying to walk stronger, or even run toward the Lord. And, the enemy likes to try to remind me of things. I'm like, oh, you're still lonely, aren't you? And I'm just like, shut up. I got God, so I'm good. So it's been a long ongoing battle, but if God is for me, then who can be against me, right? Hey, sugar. Anyway, and so the closer, or I can't say the closer, God's already fully present, but the more I walk with him and want to walk with him and want to serve him more and more and more, and the more I want to have his truth in my life, and submit to him more and more. I pray to that. I pray pretty much every day for like the last several months. I'm like, Lord, I'm just like, all of me is under you, under your submission, under your obedience, all the my desires, my artwork, my skills, my thoughts, my everything about me is under you, God. I don't want anything to come above you or before you. And I mean that. That's been like a prayer that there's a lot more to the prayer, but that's something I've been praying for the last couple months, because I see this skill that he's given me, and I only want it to serve him now, and not myself, not the world, not I want to serve other people in the sense that I want to help teach other people, or help to give other people good and entertainment and good media to consume. But like I said, I don't want it to be just for my own gain. Like, what can I gain for this? And that's another, to wrap back on Saturday. I don't want money to be an incentive for me, and that's why I wanted to present Saturday to the Lord, because all day I had the enemy being like, oh, look at the potential, look at all this money you're losing. And at the end of the day, I didn't even feel bad, because I know a lot of the vendors had a hard time. So I'm like, I didn't really lose anything. This is worth it. I would do that if I could, every show I go to. And so there's just been a lot of like battle. And I'm just so thankful again and again and again that, because of Jesus, and just so thankful for what he's done, and that he's my strength. Because boy, I got a little fragile heart. I got a little pea brain, so I always need his help. And so I've been very solidly walking with the Lord. I mean, like I said, I've never walked away from the Lord before, but I have been in dark places. But for the past several years, I've been really running towards him. And I've been really taking my relationship with him very seriously in that regards to my artwork, and in regards to everyday life, like how, if I, what I can do to better myself, to walk more in the spirit, and less in the flesh, because out of him there's all wisdom, and I don't want to neglect that. I never want to neglect him again. And so I'm just, like I said, there's a lot of nuance to the stories as well. But in the end of it all, I was raised in a Christian household, and by God's grace and goodness and patience, I've been just sanctified and regenerated throughout the years, more and more so. And I want those principles to be radiated through all my life, my work, my art, whatever I do, to serve the Lord alone, because he's worthy. And it's an honor to be able to wait on him, and to know that he is good and he's enough. And I'm just so thankful for his patience with me, though, that's for sure. Because I'm a little, I know I can be stubborn. And I'm like, Lord, if I'm gonna be stubborn, let me at least be stubborn for you. It's not against him, but for him.
That's a good stubborn for Jesus.
Yeah.
So before we roll out, is there anything else you would want to say, or you would want people to know about you, or your art, or your creation, or just anything you would want to put out on the small bubble of the world that this will touch?
I mean, I've pretty much covered a lot of my ramblings, and I'm so thankful that you've given me part of your platform to be able to share that. Like I said, my heart is totally, it's all God's, it's all his. Everything that I do, it's for him and him alone, and that's not going to change. Because I know what it was like to be in that dark place. I'm like, well, you can stay in that dark place, I ain't going back. So and that's my heart and intention behind it all. And just like Saturday and all the other, every day of my life, I don't care who reads my content, who approaches me, I'm going to treat you the same either way. And I'm going to treat you the best I can in love and kindness as God has treated me. And that's what I want to show through my stories. That's what I want to show, that, God can reach and wants to reach out to anybody. It's his will and his heart for all men to come under him, and to all men to surrender to him and to receive his salvation. And I want to show that. That's what this homeboy, that's what he represents. He looks wild, but because those are my favorite kind of stories, and like the real life stories of people I know are like, examples of man looks on the outside, God looks at the heart. And I love stuff like that because it really exemplifies his redemption and his strength and his salvation and his grace. And so I just want to exemplify that in all that I do. I want it to serve him, whether big, small, whatever. I'm just very thankful for the Lord. And I'm thankful for Mr. Hector for letting me be on his super sweet, epic podcast. And it's my first podcast, so I'm really excited for that. So, woo! I'm a little wild child. I'm sorry.
You're great, dude. All right, so we're gonna have Brittney's Instagram linked into the show notes, and you can check out her art there and contact her with all the commissions you're going to want for the books that she's going to make for you, or for any of the comic book publishers that are like, no, I'd totally love to publish her book. If any of that happens, you can reach her and reach out to that. But thank you everybody for joining. And if you're watching this, you can find the audio version over at faithandfandom.podbean.com. If you're listening to this, you can go watch it on facebook.com/faithandfandom or on Faith and Fandom on YouTube. And Brittney, thank you so much for just giving some of your time and sharing your heart and your vision and your passion.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Hector. This was such an honor and a blessing for me. Honestly, like, I'm smiling ear to ear. I'm so thankful for this. And I'm so thankful to be able to have met you. And I would love to be on your podcast more and more. It's super cool. And I love talking about this kind of stuff. So thank you again so much.
I don't think it'll be the last time. Don't worry.
Woo! Let's go.
All right.